Good Sunday morning. I'm Jaden Jefferson, and welcome to this week's Community Focus. Today I'm joined by Toledo Police Chief Michael Troendle here, and we're in 2024, so it's a new year for you, but there are still those issues that come with the new year, and it's still the gun violence, and recently we had an incident at Franklin Park Mall, right, involving youth here in the city. So kind of offer some insight. What are you seeing from a Toledo Police perspective with regard to youth gun violence?
So it's no secret that last year we saw an increase in our youth being involved in gun crimes, including our homicides, our shooting homicides. It's something as a police department we're trying to address, whether it's through our different programming, through our initiatives out there on the street, through our team initiatives or our stop initiatives, our gangs and our SWAT team being out there, trying to get guns off the street along with our operations crews. We continue to struggle with that, but it is something that we definitely are working on, and it's something that 2024 is a priority for us to get more guns and to reduce our shootings.
And one thing that we often talk about when we talk about youth violence is the sources. So sometimes it can be that guns are being stolen, sometimes it can be that guns are simply being left out. How do you tackle this issue? Because most people, I'm sure they store their guns because the issue would be much worse if they didn't. So for people that still aren't aware of just how important it is to take care of those guns, make sure they're not around youth, what are some tips you have?
Yeah, so the first thing is if you have a weapon, make sure it's secured. Make sure that a child cannot get their hands on it, whether it's through a gun lock. We offer free gun locks. You can get them from our police stations. Our community service office will gladly provide you with a gun lock because we are looking to try to make our community safer. And the last thing we want is a juvenile to get their hands on a weapon. If you don't use a gun lock, put it in a safe. Cars are not a good place to leave your weapon. You're right. We have we have guns stolen from houses, from cars. There's also ways they're getting guns on the street. But the reality is our parents need to be involved in their kids' lives and make sure they understand what their kids are doing. Make sure if their kid has a gun to get it away from them. They can call the police department. We'll come pick it up, and we'll definitely work with them to get their son, daughter some help and find a way to get them out of the life and hopefully not need a gun.
We have this broad homicide number that's down, youth homicides that are going up. How do we tackle that? Because I think if they're still making up a good portion of our homicides, it looks like we have to target that area.
Yeah, absolutely. So thankfully, we did see a good reduction in homicides, roughly 31% last year. That's a great first start. What we need to do is look at the anomalies, and the anomaly was our 0 to 17 age group for victims of homicides did go up. So that is definitely something that is on our radar. We're looking at it. Some of the things we talked about through some of our programming, but also getting our school resource officers involved and talking to the kids in the school, trying to figure out a way to get them to not resort to the gun, right? So there's better ways to resolve our conflict and our fights that we have. Gun should not be one of those things. So that's what we're trying to do is figure out a way to get the guns out of the hands of our youth.
And one of the things you just brought up was SROs, school resource officers that are in schools that can be of assistance. And so kind of detail for people what the role of a school resource officer is in combating this issue.
Okay, yeah, so the fact of the matter is school resource officer has a much different relationship with our kids in the school than our normal police officers. So they build a rapport with those kids. They have a better understanding of that undercurrent that they're hearing inside the school. So they have a much better opportunity to intervene when they're hearing things inside the school and actually try to prevent violence from happening, try to prevent our kids from getting in trouble, and give them different resources, different outlets to try to keep them out of there. So our school resource officers are a critical role for our youth because they are there every day working with them, and they can understand exactly what's happening, and they just have a better relationship.
In 2020 was a difficult year for homicides, for sure, because we definitely had a lot of youth that were just stuck at home due to the pandemic, and so they were doing a lot of things at home, and we saw a sharp increase in homicides from that year. And one thing on top of that was the fact that their mental health suffered as well, which plays a role in this. So how does mental health tie into gun violence?
So mental health has been a big problem in our society, right? So it's not only gun violence, it's our kids, our parents. They're dealing with a lot of different things that have happened over the last 3 years. And unfortunately, that has taken a toll on some people. We saw some different incidents that occurred with the police departments, unfortunately, where we had to use fatal force, and it was due to mental health problems. It is something that our officers are seeing day in and day out. It is also something that we prioritize through having our critical intervention training and crisis intervention training, and getting our officers trained in that. It helps us better deal with people that are going through a mental breakdown, and it allows our officers to de-escalate that and hopefully have a more positive outcome than somebody that's not trained.
And going into 2024, there's reason for optimism because we are seeing that decrease in homicides happening. So, in looking at this year, what are some other things that TPD is going to be launching or just looking at in order to continue that positive momentum?
So you mentioned homicides and seeing a big decrease in there. So one of the things that we are focusing on this year is our non-fatal shootings. So we have a lot of people that were shot during 2023 that didn't die. So we want to try to attack that and get that number down. And a lot of those go hand in hand with the ways we try to reduce homicides, but it is something that we're paying a lot more attention to, and we're going to try to get that reduced, along with looking at some of our property crimes, trying to make our community safer, more livable, and that includes like our burglaries and trying to attack that. We've done a great job over the last decade of reducing our burglaries, but I think we can still do a little bit better.
And we're definitely tackling a lot of these issues at the local level with the resources that we have. But have we got enough support from the state and federal government in tackling this issue as well?
So we have great partnerships with our federal and state agencies, as well as our other local departments. So we are constantly tapping into those resources through task force, and they're constantly out there helping us address issues. Talk about gun violence, right? So our feds give us an avenue into addressing gun violence and how those firearms are purchased and brought into the city. So we exploit those relationships all the time, and they help us out and try to make the city safer.
And one thing that I wanted to bring up too was the fact that we have these ghost guns that you really can't track. Kind of talk about those as well, because some guns that you have them registered, but some guns, they really appear out of nowhere. And so is that a big issue here locally?
So we don't see a lot of the 3D printed weapons. I'm sure there are some out there, and we do occasionally run across them. Fortunately for us, that's not the main issue in Toledo. But it is an issue across the country, and it is always something that we're on the lookout for, trying to figure out a way to get those off the street as well. Ultimately, we want to get guns out of the hands of people that don't have a constitutional right to carry a weapon. So those illegal guns, those guns that are being used in crimes, those are the guns we're seeking. That's what we're trying to get off the street. It's going to make our city safer. It's going to make it a lot better place to live.
Yeah, and despite the optimism that we have, the good momentum we have, there are still people that are fearful in their neighborhoods. And so for those Toledoans that need that extra comfort beyond the numbers, what's that message for them?
Yeah, the message is take an active part in your community. So as a police department, we can't be everywhere at the same time, and we can't know everything that's happening inside the neighborhood as if you lived in that neighborhood, right? So we just need you to have eyes and ears open, and when you see something, say something. Go ahead and report it. There's tons of ways for our community to report anonymously, and it might be that one single tip that prevents a homicide, prevents a shooting, or allows us to get in there before tempers flare to that point where there's no turning back.
And correct me if I'm wrong, there are neighborhoods. Each neighborhood kind of has an assigned officer that they can get in touch with.
So yes, so we have obviously our street officers are assigned a neighborhood every day, but we also have our community service officers that are assigned a section of the city. And if you go onto our website, you can click on there, put your address in. It'll tell you who your community service officer is, and by all means, reach out to them, send them a message, an email, and they'll get back to you, and they'll gladly work with you. That's their sole purpose.
Well, Toledo Police Chief Michael Troendle, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, and that is this week's Community Focus. Have a great week.